Math is a wonderful thing. Math is a really cool thing.
Alright, next we are going to discuss what are the properties of inequality. So the first property is the trichotomy property. This property states that when any two numbers are compared, there are only three possible outcomes. It can be the first number is smaller than the second number, both numbers are equal, or the second number is smaller than the first number. So here's an example of a trichotomy property. So let's have two numbers. Any given two numbers, one of these will always be true. So let's say we have 5 and 10. We know that 5 is less than 10. So this one is true. If we have negative 8 and negative 50, we know that negative 8 is greater than negative 50. So this will be true. And finally, if we have 1 and 1, we know that 1 is equal to 1, therefore this will be true. So, given any two numbers, the relationship of those two numbers can be either first number is less than the second number, the two numbers are equal, or the first number is greater than the second number. So that's your trichotomy property. Next property is our transitive property. If A is less than B and B is less than C, then we can conclude that your first number is less than your third number, or we can say A is less than C. So here's an analogy. Let's say Barbie is shorter than Ken, and Ken, so that's your A is less than B, and Ken is shorter than Batman. So this is your B less than C. So what can we conclude? We can now relate the height of Barbie to Batman and say Barbie should be shorter than Batman, and that is your A less than C. So given the following, 5x plus 6 is less than y and y is less than x plus 100, what would be the result after applying the transitive property of inequalities? So we know that 5x plus 6 is less than y. At the same time, y is less than x plus 100. So using our transitive property, we can just remove this and say that 5x plus 6 is less than x plus 100. We also have addition property for inequality. So if A is less than B, if we are going to add the same quantity on both sides of inequality, still the left side A plus C should be less than B plus C. So same thing with subtraction property, multiplication property, and division property holds true for inequality. The only difference here is that if you are going to multiply or divide by a negative number, for example, here, if C is negative and we have 5 greater than 1, if you are going to multiply both sides by a negative number, this will become negative 10 and this one is negative 2. Can we still say that negative 10 is greater than negative 2? Not anymore. So we have to flip the inequality. So negative 10 is now less than negative 2. From the previous video, this is what we mentioned as the big but theorem. Alright, so let's try to apply the different properties of inequality in solving multi-step inequalities. So here I have a fraction, I have a denominator, So the first step that we have to do is to get rid of our denominator. So I'm going to use our multiplication property to multiply both sides with a number 3. So that's multiplication property of inequality. Next, I'm going to, it's better for us to multiply negative 3 because my denominator here is negative 3 and I would like to remove this negative 3 here. So the plan is to cancel this one out. So I'm going to multiply by negative 3. Next, I'm going to use multiplicative inverse to cancel negative 3 and negative 3. So I will have here r. 1 times negative 3 is equal to negative 3. Negative 3 divided by 3 is equal to negative 1. Now, be careful because we multiplied by a negative number. So we have to flip the inequality. So this is now our final answer. So to graph the solution for this inequality, so let's say this is negative 1, we said that if there's no line under, the circle should be an open circle. And we have to shade all numbers that are less than negative 1. And all of those numbers will be located to the left of negative 1. So this will be the solution set. In some cases, the way they're going to write the solution set is a, or since we are using r here as a variable, r element of the real number such that your r is less than negative 1. And this one is in set notation. So this is a fancy way of writing r less than negative 1. It's just telling us that your r here are just real numbers, and we are going to collect all real numbers that are less than negative 1. And that is the solution set of this inequality. Alright, next question. Here, I'm going to distribute 1/3 to 3x and 9. So 1/3 times 3x, 1/3 times 9 will be this. So that's our distributive property over addition. Next, we can simplify 1/3 times 3 is just equal to 1. So that's using our multiplicative inverse. It will just be equal to x. 1/3 times 9 is equal to 3. That's just 1 times 9 is 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay, so that's our multiplicative inverse. Again, it's because we were able to cancel the 3 and the 3. Next, I'm going to use subtraction property, both sides of the inequality. So subtraction property, and then cancel out 3 and negative 3. X is less than 9. So that's your additive inverse. Okay, now if in case they will not show these steps anymore, so from this step to this step, it will now be additive inverse. We have to skip this step also. Okay, so if the question was, what is the property that we use in order to get step 2 from step 1? So from x plus 3 less than 12, we have x less than 9. Then that will be our additive inverse because we just canceled the 3 and the negative 3. The 3 disappeared by subtracting 3 both sides. So we used additive inverse. So how are we going to graph the solution set? If this one is our 9, now this one has no line under, so it should be an open circle. It says x less than 9, so all numbers to the left of 9 should be shaded. So I'm going to shade this portion here. Now note that this is the same thing as 9 greater than x. It means that 9 is the maximum number. So this will be also the solution set. In a set notation, it can be written as x element of real number such that your x is less than 9, or x element of real number, 9 is greater than x. Either way will be correct. Next question. Again, I have here denominators. I'm going to use my LCD, which is 4. I'm going to use my 4 here to multiply both sides of inequality. So this is our multiplication property. Next, I'm going to use my distributive property. 4 times x over 2, 4 times 1, and greater than 4 times 1/4 x, and then 4 times -6. So that's our distributive property. Okay, here 4 times x over 2 is the same thing as 4 divided by 2. That's 2x. 4 times 1 is 4. Now, the number that I multiplied in both sides is a positive number, so I don't need to flip my inequality. 1/4 times 4 is equal to 1. -4 times 6 is -24. So we were able to cancel the 4 and 4 here, so that should be a multiplicative inverse. Next, subtract x to both sides. We'll be able to get x plus 4 greater than -24. So this is your additive inverse, and this is your subtraction property. And finally, subtract 4 to both sides. We'll get -28. So if I will not show the subtraction property here, then the step that I'm going to use now will be additive inverse. Again, we skip the subtraction, so we just cancel the 4 here by subtracting 4 both sides, so we have -28. So if this one is your -28, it says greater than -28. There's no line under, so it should be an open circle. All numbers should be to the right of -28, and all of those numbers will be greater than -28. In a fancy way of writing this solution, it will be set notation x element of real number x is greater than -28. Alright, last question. I have here b minus 4 over 6 is greater than b over 2. Now for the sake of our discussion, I'll just make this greater than or equal. Now note that this inequality is the same thing as this inequality. Okay, they are the same thing. So I'm going to just use this inequality to solve this problem so that we can just expose ourselves in this notation. Alright, so first, note that I have two denominators. I'm going to use the LCD of 6 and 2, which is 6. I'm going to use 6 to multiply both sides. That's multiplication property. 6 times 1 over 6 is just equal to 1. So 6 and 6 here will cancel out. Get b minus 4. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 times 1 is 3b. That's your multiplicative inverse. I'm going to subtract b to both sides, and that will be our subtraction property. -4. Now I don't need to flip my inequality, although I have a negative sign here, because I did not multiply or divide. Greater than or equal to 2b. That's your additive inverse. Now divide by 2 both sides. Again, I divided by a positive number, so no need to flip the inequality. I will have here now, well, this one, division by 2, is division property, and then canceling the 2 and 2 here will be equal to 1b. Negative 4 over 2 is negative 2. So that will be your multiplicative inverse. Alright, so this one is negative 2 greater than or equal to b. It means that the maximum number is negative 2. Or if you're gonna read this one from right to left, b is less than or equal to negative 2. So if this one is your negative 2, since we have a line under, it should be a shaded circle. And since b here is less than or equal to negative 2, we have to shade all the numbers to the left of negative 2. Alright, so this will be our solution set. Alright, there we go. That's what we have for properties, solving multi-step inequalities using properties of inequalities.
Math is a wonderful thing. Math is a really cool thing.